I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual. 起立，面向佛堂，参加先鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，参加各位的传世一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。
I'd like to wish all of you a good morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you happen to be. I never do get over having to acknowledge multiple different time zones for this meeting, but we've expanded into enough different time zones that it's important to do that, and that's just the coolest thing in the world. Anyway, as it seems to occur remarkably frequently between Derek and I, you know, what we were talking about just a minute ago, the upcoming initiations, the near miraculous spread of the Tao teachings throughout North America here, and the way those processes are working out, kind of segues into this talk in a remarkably seamless manner. And I'll tell you why. You'll notice the title slide on my talk this morning is the significance of returning. Ultimately, we're all creatures of a spiritual nature. Whether or not we choose to acknowledge that in this lifetime is a choice that we make. But whether or not we choose to acknowledge it, it is still the truth that we are spiritual creatures, imbued for some strange and miraculous reason with the ability to contemplate our own spirituality and the nature of what happens to us after this existence, and potentially where we were prior to this existence, depending on your particular spiritual bent. Oh, well, okay, let's click over here. I love technology. I wanted to chat about chapter 40 from the Dao De Jing this morning, as this is a remarkably salient chapter on the topic of returning. And it always speaks to me as I contemplate the Tao in my meditations and practices. What it says is that the returning is the movement of the Tao. The weak is the utilization of the Tao. The myriad things of the world are born of being. Being is born of non-being. I'm going to tell you up front, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the weak is the utilization of the Tao. I really want to talk about the essence and nature of returning, because it's important to us. So we'll start out with a kind of a step-by-step primer on returning. You know, all things that we know of have a source. Everything that we know, everything that we can see and touch and taste and feel in our existence came from somewhere or something. There is nothing in our existence short of the Tao or the divine essence, God, if you will, whatever you choose to call it, that we can say for a certainty predates time, space, and the universe that we can observe. And those explanations are woefully inadequate, but they're the best we have, right? Since we can't perceive the Tao in its entirety, since we're not expansive enough in mental capacity to understand the nature and essence of the divine, we're stuck with what we can describe. And for us, that has to be good enough, at least for this lifetime. Additionally, all of the sources of the things that we know of have a source. Not a big surprise. That shouldn't be a revelation to anyone, right? Everything comes from something. Babies come from parents, parents come from grandparents. That allegory for the way existence comes into being kind of pervades every aspect of existence as far as we know. So far, not a lot of news. If we could look back far enough through all of the various sources of the myriad things that we know, sooner or later we get to what we call a singularity. The best definition I think I've ever heard for that was kind of a tongue-in-cheek definition by Neil deGrasse Tyson, who says that in terms of physics and mathematics, a singularity simply means they have absolutely no idea what happened. I like that explanation. It suits me just fine, and I think it's a valid admission that there are things in this universe that we just plain don't understand. But it begs the question, what was there before there was a singularity? Because everything that we know from the occurrence of that singularity, the Big Bang, if you will, or whatever that moment of creative inception was, and everything that followed it, all count as the myriad things. Right? Once again, not a lot of news, but take just a moment and let your mind marinate in that for just a second. Everything that we know from the point in time where our universe came into being until now is the myriad things. None of them are the ultimate source. The myriad things, according to Lao Tzu, all originate from something that already existed, from being, if you will. But the point of origination, the initial being, the spark of existence, was born from non-being. What we call that is Wu-Ji, the void, the aspect of the Tao that is the moment before conception, the second before the thought congeals into reality, the second before creation. It is the ever-pregnant piece of the Tao that contains nothing and yet still contains everything. It is that point of origination. That's not to say that the myriad things exist there in any real sort of construct, but it's where they originate. It's where the concept has the ability to become reality. And all things ultimately return to that state of non-being at some time. The mere fact that the myriad things are not in the state of non-being does not mean that they don't originate there. They absolutely do. But we don't have the ability to describe, analyze, or touch that state of non-being that presupposes existence. And that's what makes this chapter and some of the concepts within the philosophical Tao somewhat difficult to grasp. It appears to be paradoxical, but in reality it's not. And the concept is actually relatively simple. So why is it important? Well, first of all, returning being the movement of the Tao is not that way by accident. It is that way because it must be so. It is the cyclical nature of everything that we know. Everything we know is born, grows old, dies, is replaced by another cycle of birth and life and death, okay? No matter what it is. All of the stuff that we create, all of the things that we build, all of the things that spring forth from human consciousness eventually fall apart and return to the earth. And some of those things occur in a remarkably brief period of time. And although I saved this for a slide that's coming up, I'll just say right now, to maintain my perspective on living, sometimes it's helpful for me to think that in 50 years' time, a very brief amount of time, not even a decent blink of an eye in the span of the cosmos, The house that I'm living in may not be here anymore. I guarantee you, in 50 years' time, I'm not going to be here anymore. At least I certainly hope not. I'll be really old then. The car I'm driving won't be here. Okay. My really, really nice Toyota Sienna minivan that seats 7 and hauls all my kids around and has all the bells and whistles on it is going to fall into rust long before 50 years goes by. And 50 years is no time at all. Even if we all live to be 200 years old in the span of universal time, that's not even a breeze. It's a flash in the pan. When we think about the age of the earth, 4 to 6 billion years or so, that doesn't even approach universal time. And so it helps me to maintain a more realistic perspective on human endeavors and human endurance. And it is because I know in that brief period of time, I'm going to wind up returning to that from whence I came. Okay? The returning isn't just a good idea, it's a universal law. It's going to happen. And in order to return, all things have to pass from being to non-being. It's kind of a rule. The myriad things return to the source by transitioning from being to non-being. Okay? But that doesn't imply the annihilation or obliteration of that which was created. It's not destruction. It's a change of state, a return to the void, to the source of unlimited possibilities, unlimited creations, unlimited choices, the never-ending cycle of birth and death and rebirth in all of the wonderful ways that comes to pass in this existence. Okay? Pardon. In physics, we talk about a couple of laws. The law of the conservation of information and the law of conservation of energy, both of which state in short that neither energy nor information can be created or destroyed. They can't be lost. They must be conserved. We recognize those things on a physical plane, even if that physical plane is at a quantum level. But if it's the truth there, it's the truth elsewhere as well. It's a hypothesis espoused by many that even if we're consumed by a black hole, the information that once was us still is not lost. Neither is the energy. Where does that go? Well, it goes back to the void to potentially be recycled again. We tend to view those things from a spiritual perspective as the cycle of birth and death and either heaven or hell or reincarnation or some other spiritual or religious set of beliefs, depending upon where y'all are. And that's okay. But Lao Tzu views it as returning. No more, no less. And so the implications of this very short little chapter of the Tao Te Ching are pretty far reaching. First of all, it kind of reminds us that we're not really special. And we're really not. Although we haven't encountered it yet, I am going to posit that one day, if the human species lasts long enough, we're going to discover that the universe is full of life. Okay? I don't see for there to be much of any other possibility other than that, for the following reason. It happened here. And if you look at the diversity of life on this planet, okay, it is much more likely, considering the true magnitude of the universe, that did not only happen once. That just isn't the way that things work. Can I prove that statement? Absolutely not. Not even going to try. In my heart of hearts, I believe it, though. Okay, we're not special. Even if the Earth is the only planet with life on it, we're still not special. Every species on this planet undergoes the very same processes the very same ways. What makes us special, perhaps, amongst all of them, is that we have the ability to contemplate those things. But once again, I'm going to tell you that I am not completely convinced that whales, dolphins, and other cetaceans don't have the same intelligence. They don't have the ability to communicate it, but I absolutely know they're smart. The 2 dogs that live with me in this house, I'm telling you, are sentient. They are aware of themselves. They're aware of their surroundings. At some level, they have some memory. They keep waiting for me to get home every night. They know who feeds them. They know who loves on them. I personally think true enlightenment is being a fat, happy house dog in a good home. These 2 have it made. Of course, that may not be your view of enlightenment, but these 2 sure seem to be happy. But all things ultimately return to that source. And so in that regard, we are not special. It helps us to adjust our perspective relative to this existence and any future existences. Once we realize that all of these processes are cyclical and recurring, that ought to provide a modicum of comfort and reassurance to us that perhaps maybe the end of this existence isn't the end of existences as we know it. That there may be something else out there other than eternal glorification or punishment. I personally find that extremely comforting and reassuring. Once again, can I prove it? No. But it's what I believe. And further, it illustrates our place in the cosmos relative to everything else. Lao Tzu doesn't qualify the myriad things. And the myriad things includes all of us. Just a little something to think about. And so, I guess if I had to wrap this up in a couple of takeaway statements, I'd say this. That first of all, knowing that we're all on this path of returning, might help us to maintain some peace and a more realistic and proper perspective on this life. And that's a healthy, beneficial, and wonderful thing. And that understanding the true nature of the universe and of existence, of being and non-being, may provide some folks some comfort and reassurance in terms of birth and death and living and lifetimes after this and whatever their particular beliefs are. It may help shape some thoughts and some awarenesses that heretofore maybe weren't so well understood. And perhaps most importantly, like everything else, we are all children of the Tao. The fact that we can't wrap our arms or heads around it, the fact that we can't quantify or qualify it, the fact that we can't define its attributes or dimensions, doesn't mean that it isn't real or tangible, and it doesn't mean that that we can choose to ignore our place in it. because even if we try to ignore it, it's still there. And we're still going to follow those universal and natural laws, like it or not. It's a lot easier if we choose to try to move along with that flow and understand the nature of how things work than it is to deny, ignore, or try to swim upstream. Now, I know no matter how many times I say that, there are going to be those who are going to choose to try and swim upstream, and I guess that's okay too. But my hope is one day that, that everyone will learn that it is a much more enjoyable and peaceful ride to go along with and align one's life with the flow of the Tao, and to allow those natural laws to rule as they should in our lives. Thank you all awful much for letting me share with you. I really enjoy doing this, and I sure hope, as always, that something I said was helpful to someone. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your Sunday.
Thank you so much, Bill. And Bill, I'd like to provide a quick comment on the singularity that you have mentioned. It's a fascinating subject, and I would strongly encourage everyone to just do a Google search on the word singularity, and you will find a whole world embedded in that one term. In the meantime, Bill, I want to convey some feedback from Tim. Great talk, Bill. The initial human response to the truth of returning you talk about is fear. It is our struggle, in my view, to move beyond fear to acceptance and comfort.
I sure hope so.
From Kevin, thank you, Bill. From Mike, great talk. And the just to mention, the person associated probably the most with the term singularity in the technological sense. Singularity itself, it's a term from mathematics, from physics. When you divide a number by 0, the result is undefined. That's a singularity. When you have a situation where there's a black hole is basically a singularity in space-time. When in the technological context, a singularity has to do with the rapid advances that we have made as a species to increase our intelligence. And most of the progress has been in what we call artificial intelligence, or AI. And I remember growing up hearing about back then, the very primitive states of AI research. And I remember the many statements that were made at the time. Statements you may be familiar with, statements like, a computer can never exceed its programming. And that turns out to be false, which I know is going to be a surprise for many people to hear that it is possible for a computer to exceed its programming. What does that even mean? Later on, there was also a statement made is that, yeah, maybe you can create a computer that'll play passable chess against you, but it's never going to be smart enough to defeat a good human player. So chess programs got better, defeated competent human players. Then the moving goalpost became, well, okay, maybe you can defeat some human players that are pretty competent in the game of chess, but never defeat a world champion in the game of chess. Well, that particular goal came and went back in the back in 1997. IBM's Deep Blue defeated chess grandmaster Garry Kasparov in 1997, and that was a shock. It came as a shock to many. But after 1997, it became rather accepted that pretty much the game of chess has gone beyond the human level, that computers now have the ability to play at a level far beyond the human level, and it doesn't take a supercomputer anymore. Any computer can pretty much do it nowadays. It's improvement not only in processing power, but also in the algorithm that are used. Then another statement that used to be made is that, well, you can be very good at a specific thing like chess, but you can never have artificial intelligence that's good in a general sense, like having knowledge in a broad range of areas, subjects. Well, in 2011, IBM's Watson supercomputer became the champion of Jeopardy, answering questions from, different fields of human endeavor, and it taught itself. That was the alarming thing. This is back in 2011, so we're talking about 6 years ago already. And recently, if you've been keeping track of news, the game of Go that was invented in ancient China, that was thought to be the perfect ultimate game of complexity that has such simplistic rules and yet is almost impossible for human beings to master. Well, it's fallen to artificial intelligence as well. Every single time there's any statements about how artificial intelligence can never do X, Y, Z, in a few years, artificial intelligence manages to do it. So the whole point about singularity is that things keep increasing, they're not decreasing. AI level is constantly getting smarter and smarter. It's not getting dumber and dumber. So where does it end? Well, according to Ray Kurzweil, it's all going to come to a head about 30 years from now, roughly 30 years from now, where the advances year after year will get to a point where machines actually become smart enough to make themselves smarter. That's the key realization there. We human beings have ways of making ourselves smarter as well, but we're biological entities, so it's not as easy. Humans cannot compare to machines when it comes to improving itself. We can improve ourselves very slowly. Machines can improve themselves very quickly if it knows how. So within a very short time, AI can go beyond human level, far beyond. At that point, we have no idea what's going to happen. Well, we get a Skynet scenario where AI realizes that humans are more of an impediment to its progress, and therefore will take steps to effectively wipe us out. Well, nobody knows. We hope not. So that's when you get to that part in your personal research on singularity and read about the different opinions that are out there, you'll see that it can actually be pretty scary, and it's actually taken quite seriously by many people. Of course, 30 years from now, my prediction to you here in the year 2017 is that 30 years from now, most of us will not be driving cars anymore. It's all going to be taken care of by artificial intelligence. Quite a bit to look forward to. And probably not directly related to the Tao, so I do apologize for taking everyone on a tangent.
I use Neil deGrasse Tyson's definition for illustrative effect.
Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架3鞠躬，1鞠躬，再鞠躬，3鞠躬，持架规格是1鞠躬，接班1鞠躬。Okay, everybody, we are done.